Yes, welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Thursday, April 21st. Part 2, breakdown of the NFL quarterbacks and this draft class coming up. Big game breakdown is going to be the 3 playoff games. We'll throw 1 baseball game at you and a big trade to talk about as well. Bad beats and bad bets in a second. Teddy, we're a week away. I'm excited. I know we got a draft expert on next week, but the Browns actually did the right thing. Another big trade in the NFL.
Well, the Browns front office did the right thing. Now let's see what the coaching staff does. And look, I'm a Hugh Jackson fan. I thought he was a good hire for Cleveland. But all the reports out of Cleveland are saying, hey, the front office, these are all analytics guys, a bunch of Harvard and Yale and Ivy League graduates who are running that Cleveland front office now. And this is the deal you're supposed to make if you're Cleveland in that regard. And then you have a coaching staff, which Jackson has assembled. And again, we like Jackson. The staff he's assembled supposedly consists of a number of anti-analytics guys. So you're going to have the front office doing one thing. You might have the coaching staff doing another. If the Browns are doing it somehow, some way, even with the right move, they'll screw it up, Paul.
Well, that always seems to happen. You're right.
Yeah.
One bad beat from yesterday. Pistons and the Cavs. The Cavs hit 23-pointers, but the teams combined to shoot 54% from the free throw line, and the game stayed under by 4 or 5 points. Depends what number you got.
Yeah, I mean, when one team hits 23s, you're supposed to cash over tickets. And this game was on an overpace all the way through, and then the last couple of minutes, once Cleveland, really the back half of the fourth quarter, once the Cavs took the big lead against the Pistons, the pace slowed, and all those free throws that they were missing earlier started to add up. 54% free throw shooting. Tough beat if you had the Cavs, Pistons, over the number.
Plenty of bad bets again. How about Charlotte and the under? Our play of the day went up in flames, and the Heat had 72 points at the half. They scored 43 points in the second quarter. And, 2 nights ago, the Celtics had 7 points in the first quarter, and Memphis scored 11 in the first quarter. The Heat scored 23 points in 3.5 minutes.
I mean, that Charlotte defense, at least a step behind the Heat again. And one thing I say about this, when I'm wrong and when we're wrong, there's the old debate. Would you rather lose your game by a half point or lose it by 50? With the half-point loss, you're like, so frustrating, but I was right, and I was half right. The 50-point loss, you're like, hey, I was dead wrong. Sometimes I don't mind a dead wrong loss, and I was dead wrong about Charlotte's ability to adjust to Miami's defense. Look at this graph. The NBA's best offense this season, Golden State, 112 points per 100 possessions. The NBA's worst defense this season, the Lakers, allowing 109 points per 100 possession. Look at Miami in this series. A 134.7 points per 100.
Jeez.
That's some pretty impressive offensive efficiency and some pretty bad defense from the Charlotte side of the equation.
All right, see if we can come up with something game 3 on Saturday. To baseball, more bad bets. Archer loses again, Teddy. The Rays were a bad bet. He's got an ERA of 7 and change.
Yeah, and this is a guy who was one of the preseason favorites for the Cy Young Award. It's April. You can kiss that Cy Young goodbye.
Yep.
0-4, 7.32 ERA. He's given up 6 home runs and 19.2 innings of work. And oh, by the way, Archer, I believe, has been favored in every game. Favored to pick him in every game so far.
Dude, how about the Pirates? Jeff Locke blew up again. His last start, he walked the ballpark, and now he got roughed up against the Padres.
Yeah, the Padres can't hit. So when you're giving up 11 hits and 8 runs in 3 innings of work, it's problematic. Of course, you talked about this MLB season high, 7 walks in his last start, issued 4 more last night. Very, very rough outing for Jeff Locke in Pittsburgh. And Locke, of course, still winless on the season.
How about some American League overs? More bad bets.
Yeah, AL overs, nothing but disasters last night. There was one over that cashed. But again, you look at the Grand Salami. We never talk about the Grand Salami, and I don't handicap the Grand Salami, but every once in a while you give it a look. The Grand Salami, of course, is a wager that some books take on the total runs scored in every game, whether it's baseball, you see it in hockey, you see it in the NFL. But in baseball, the Grand Salami yesterday was sitting at $1.24.5, and it stayed a good 20 runs under in that, not a good day if you were betting overs, particularly in the American League.
One of our best bets, or play of the day rather, was the the Clippers to win the series against the Blazers. Do you have any confidence that Portland can make this a series after down 0-2? They can't make any shots.
No. And the Clippers' full season defensive numbers aren't telling the story of the Clippers right now. Over the last 10 games, their defense improved by leaps and bounds. And if you were reading, again, if you're doing your homework and reading the local papers and looking for the players' quotes and the coaches' quotes, you saw a ton of it with this team. Hey, we're getting our defense together. Doc Rivers, hey, this is the best D we played all year. We've certainly seen it in the first 2 games of that series. And even when it shifts back to Portland, the Clips are going to, maybe the Blazers still won, but I don't think this series goes past 5 games, maybe not past 4.
Big game breakdown up next. We'll start with the Thunder and the Mavs on SportsBit. Betting insight today on SBR.com.
Visit SBRUFC.com to find the best odds and sportsbook bonuses available for UFC 197.
Time for a big game breakdown. 4 games, rapid fire. Let's start in the playoffs in the association, the Thunder and the Mavs. OKC 8.5, 196.5. Finally, some Dallas money after this hit 9.5. Durant took the blame for what happened in Game 2, 7 of 33. That's well documented. But he has a history of bouncing back after a poor performance, Teddy. And how much credit do we give Wesley Matthews for what happened in Game 2?
Well, I mean, Durant averaged a missed shot or a turnover for every 81 seconds that he was on the floor. It's as bad a game as a superstar can have. But look at this graph right here. It's going to show pretty clearly you want to like Kevin Durant after a dismal shooting effort. How about this? After shooting 35% from the floor or worse over the last 5 seasons, his next game, 52% shooting, more than 29 points per game. That's pretty strong bounce back numbers. But you talk about the Wesley Matthews issues. I mean, Matthews, here's his quote. It wasn't a scheme or anything. That was just heart. Just us getting into his airspace. We probably can't expect him to miss as many shots as he did in Game 2, but we'll be damned if we don't try. I mean, they weren't all just him missing shots. So the question is, how much was Dallas and Matthews defensively, and how much was just Kevin Durant having a bad day?
Yeah, I give Carlisle a lot of credit. They're controlling tempo, but OKC lost that game. And if you look at these numbers, Dallas shot 42%. They had 14 turnovers and 12 assists, and they got beat on the glass by 9. So Westbrook and Durant not making a shot. Is that going to happen again? I doubt it, but we'll see what happens tonight. Hey, Teddy, how about how this total has crashed from Game 1 to Game 3?
Yeah, and look at Billy Donovan, and I'm not surprised at all that total has crashed. Dallas has been able to control the pace, and of course the Mavs, like the Clippers, over the last 10 games of the regular season, played at a very different pace and with a very different defensive mentality than they did for them compared to their full season numbers. It's been a significant market adjustment in this series, deservedly so. But we got to talk about the other thing that Wesley Matthews did in that game against Kevin Durant. Here's a quote from Billy Donovan, who thought Matthews may have gotten away with a fair bit in that ballgame when it came to jostling and fouling. Quote, I thought Matthews worked really, really hard on Kevin, but with one foul in that amount of time, it just goes to show you. There was a lot of contact going on. I'm not saying just towards them. I'm saying both ways. I think we're going to have to play through some of that and realize there's going to be a lot of holding and grabbing on particular situations.
Interesting. We'll look for that. All right, Game 3, Pacers and Raptors. The game is now the Raptors on the road. They are laying 193.5. And Game 2 came down to would the Pacers blow it? Because you look at this graphic. In the first, Paul George needs some help. But in the first 2 games, George, 20 of 37 for 61 points. The rest of the team, 43 of 112 for 126. Give the guys some help. And again, the first 2 games, DeRozan and Lowry, no shows.
Well, that's the scary thing for Indiana, is that Toronto's 2 best players haven't played well in this year. They haven't played well in the playoffs ever. But some really, really ugly numbers from that duo. And in particularly, DeRozan goes 10 for 37 in the series.
Yikes.
And he didn't get to the free throw line in Game 2. This is a guy who's super aggressive, who loves to take it to the hole. 0 free throw attempts. Paul George is eating him up on both ends. But potentially, I don't know, do we want to call the Ian Mahinmi injury an impact injury?
No.
For Indiana?
No.
In my mind, it's significant. And I know that Miles Turner's going to get more PT with Mahinmi hurt, but he was unable to practice yesterday as a sprained lower back. Quote, It's not the best, but it's not my first time playing through stuff like that. It's something that my body is accustomed to. That being said, playing hurt last time out, 0 for 8 from the field, 3 turnovers, 7 fouls in the series. We know he's hurt. The question is, what's DeRozan's excuse? This might be a chance for him to bounce back, but on the other hand, Paul George has owned him. This game's going to come down to Toronto's superstars versus Indiana's supporting cast. Those are the two units, or the two parts of the two teams that haven't shown up yet in this series. At least one of the two should show up on Thursday night.
Looking forward to that now that the series shifts to Indy. Golden State and Houston on the road now. The Warriors 215.5. What's going to happen with Curry? That's the question everyone wants to talk about. Everyone's asking. Here's a quote from Curry that, last night, based on how I feel, I shouldn't go out there and play. What would you do, Teddy, if you're the Warriors?
Yeah, the quote, based on how I feel right now, I shouldn't play. That could change tomorrow. Of course, this was a quote from last night, but it's a fascinating point spread here with the line sitting at 5, 215.5. We've seen a trickle of Rockets money come in already, with bettors perhaps reacting to Curry's quote, because this line's in the middle. If Curry plays, this line's short. It's way short. Golden State could go off at 8 or higher. If he doesn't play, I would think it's going to drop. Obviously, it always does. We'll look at the Warriors -4, 3.5, 3. It doesn't get to a point where Houston's favored, but this line will move. This is a Malcolm in the middle line, and we're going to see some action on this. So if you get the info, if you're paying attention on game day and are following what's going on, if you get it first, you can have an edge. You really can, and get the best of the number before the full market move. But without Curry, of course, what the Warriors do, how they beat Houston, they got tough on defense and on the boards. And you know what? That's what Golden State does. You got the numbers there, Paul?
Yeah, they forced 10 steals and 19 turnovers. They also 28 offensive rebounds so far and 43 points off those offensive rebounds. And you look at the Rockets during the regular season with this graphic, second chance points allowed by Houston. Regular season, 14.5 points per game, 30th. In this series so far, 21.5. So that's been a big problem so far in this series. And another big problem, Harden has struggled.
Yeah, the Houston reserves went 7 of 10 on three-pointers in Game 2, which made the total get up a little higher than you thought it was going to, and it allowed the Rockets to stay closer than you thought they were going to. But I wouldn't necessarily count on the Houston backups hitting 7 out of 10 from three-point range in Game 3. And Harden, of course, who's been the no-show in this series, the last 3 playoff games, yeah, he's averaged almost 20 points a game, which isn't too bad for a guy who was, the NBA's one of the leading scorers again this year. Oh, by the way, he shot less than 33% from the floor, and he's got 23 turnovers during those last 3 playoff games against Golden State. James Harden has been a no-show in this series, and if the Houston is going to do anything to keep this competitive, Harden's got to show up and bring his A game, whether Curry plays or not.
And for the record, I would sit Curry tonight because they catch a break with the schedule. Game 4 is Sunday. Game 5 is Wednesday for the Warriors. One more in Major League Baseball. Tigers and the Royals. Volquez against Pelfrey. 165-9 is the total. There may not be a worse stat anywhere, Teddy, than Pelfrey when you look at his ERA so far.
And this is one of the reasons why we love ERA, because it's such a bad stat. And I know we quoted on the show, but look, Pelfrey's got a 2.78 ERA. Oh, he's pitching good, right? You want to see misleading? Let's see. He's thrown 97 strikes in 178 pitches. So he's not putting the ball over the plate. He's nibbling on the corners. Pelfrey has faced 45 batters. 19 of those batters have gotten on base. He only retired 26 of the 45. Oh, and he's got more walks than strikeouts. But 4 of the runs the Yankees scored against him were unearned. And he got away with a bunch versus the Astros because he got several key double plays, which Pelfrey is capable of doing. But don't think for a minute he's pitching well right now based on that ERA. He's been getting lit up and getting a little bit lucky. He has not been good.
What do you think of Volquez?
Oh, my God. I believe what I'm seeing from Volquez. He is competing as hard as ever when he takes the mound. Again, you look at some of the numbers that matter. 8.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. Not one of the leaders. That's certainly an excellent number. The ground ball rate at 52.4%. It's worth noting, last year, only 7 pitchers in all of baseball had more than 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings and over 50% ground balls. That's a really good combination for the defending, for the starting pitcher for the defending World Series champs.
We'll talk about the big trade in the NFL yesterday, go over the draft class with the quarterbacks, and the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Visit SBRUFC.com to find the best odds and sportsbook bonuses available for UFC 197.
All right, here's the big trade in the NFL yesterday. The Eagles get the number 2 pick and a 4th rounder in 2017. Cleveland gets the 8th pick in the draft, a 3rd and a 4th this year, a 1st-round pick in 2017, and a 2nd-round pick in 2018. Teddy, that is a massive price to give up if you're Philly, because both of these guys, whether it's Goff or Wentz, not a sure thing.
Yeah, and you look at the last couple of times teams have traded into the top 5. Let's see. Buffalo did it. They came away with Sammy Watkins. Pretty good, but he wasn't the best wide receiver in that draft. That was Odell Beckham Jr., by the way. Mm-hmm. You see Deion Jordan. You see RG3. You see Mark Sanchez. I'm not seeing a whole lot of impact players from trading to the top 5. And, you got the history of quarterbacks going 1-2 in the draft, Pauly.
Yeah.
Not that good for the guy number 2, is it?
No, I would expect one of these guys to be a bust for sure when you look at the history. So last year, Mariota and Winston, 2012, Luck and RG3. Then you had 1999, Couch and McNabb, 98, Manning and Leaf, 93, Bledsoe and Meyer, and 71, Plunkett and Archie Manning. So again, figure on one of these guys to be okay or maybe above average and the other one to stink. And I'll tell you what, I don't know what the Eagles are doing here, because after the draft, they're going to have $58 million in guaranteed money just to the quarterback position. And they couldn't wait. They wanted to run McNabb out of town. They always booed his ass, and he's going to conference championship games almost every year. How about Wentz? He's going from Bismarck to Philly.
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference. Now, look, I've done a lot of reading about Wentz. But first, I'm going to talk about Howie Roseman right here, because we'll break down the quarterbacks themselves in just a minute. Let's talk about the situation in Philadelphia. Roseman, quote, "You look at teams and it's clear. You have quarterbacks or you don't. And the teams that don't have quarterbacks are looking for them. And we don't want to be in that position going forward. I can't tell you what the future holds. I can't tell you where we're going to be picking or who's going to be there or what quarterbacks are going to come out or what teams are going to need them. So even though we understand that we made a commitment to Sam and Chase, we went into this offseason saying we wanted to improve the quarterback situation. We don't want to be in a situation where we're desperate, where we have to." So, what do you think? Did they trade up to draft Jalen Ramsey at the cornerback position, or Ezekiel Elliott at the running back position? What do you think there, Paul? Or do you think they're going to get Goff or Wentz? Whichever one, by the way, the Rams don't want and who falls into their lap, one that they have no choice as to which of the two they're going to get.
Yeah, the Rams are taking Goff, and then the Eagles are going to take Wentz. But in the meantime, they pissed off Sam Bradford. He's mad as hell, and who knows if he wants. They got to trade somebody. You can't have 3 quarterbacks and pay them all this money, and I don't know why they went out and got Chase Daniel. This makes 0 sense, so maybe they make a deal. Again, Chip Kelly said last year the Browns offered a number 1 for Bradford. So Denver needs a quarterback. The Jets need a quarterback. Maybe Chip Kelly looks at this and say, "Hey, Kaepernick, get rid of this guy. I want Sam Bradford." Who knows? But they got to trade one of them.
Well, let's just make it very clear. Another quote from Roseman. Quote, "Let me be clear." This is what he said yesterday after the trade. "Let me be clear. Sam Bradford is our starting quarterback."
He's full of
They
shit.
just re-signed him, 2-year, $35 million deal. They gave him $11 million signing bonus. But the fact that everyone, and I think Roseman's quote about the quarterbacks themselves, that there just aren't a lot. You either have one or you don't. Mm-hmm. And I think his quote speaks volumes. Much of what we talked about yesterday. Of course, if you missed yesterday's Sports Bit, check it out. I thought it was a really good show, and the deep dive into the NFL really explained there are no quarterbacks. Not many prospects. What did we come up with? 6 in the last 10 years that have turned into well above average NFL quarterbacks? I mean, they're just not coming out of college ready to go. The spread offense is a big part of it. Mm-hmm. The speed of the NFL is a big part of it. But the bottom line is, whether it's arm strength, whether it's what's between the head, whether it's the ability of NFL defenses to wreak havoc on young QBs, there's just not a lot of good quarterbacks out there. So conceptually, while I thought Philadelphia paid way too much, and I thought the Rams paid way too much, you got to have a quarterback. You really do. The question is, are any of this year's guys good enough to be that guy?
Well, I think Goff can be good, but I will point out that he struggled against good teams.
I mean, you and I both watched a lot of Goff, you know, and most of the quarterbacks on this list, you look at the graphic right now, you see the top 10 prospects. The number on the left is where they were ranked in somebody's draft order, and the number on the right, the far right, is what round they're projected to go in. Goff, yeah, he's potential. He's got a good arm. He threw the ball around a lot in college, playing in a spread offense, and he played decent opposition in the Pac-12. But at no point in college, and Goff, you know, I watched him fit some really nice throws into really tight windows, but at no point in his college career am I looking at this guy going, he's elite, he's an ace, he's the next Peyton Manning, he's the next Tom Brady. I'm like, yeah, he might be pretty good. You know, he might be a Matt Ryan or a Joe Flacco type quarterback. I don't know that he's ever going to be an elite guy. He's not, I don't think.
All right, could this be Joe Flacco Part 2? Wentz won a lot of championships. Some people can question the schedule or the talent he went up against. 6'5", 237.
Yeah, and that's why he went to North Dakota State. Of course, he was a North Dakota kid, and I believe coming out in his junior year, he was like 5'9", and he wasn't getting offers. You know, and then he had a big growth spurt, but it was too late to get those D1 big-time scholarship offers. So he ends up, playing for North Dakota State and having great success there. All I know, and I've never seen him throw, all I know is that every report about this kid is he's got a monster arm and he's got a good head on his shoulders. Mm-hmm. Those are certainly two good signs.
Paxton Lynch, I think the Browns will take him in the first round. They'll probably trade down again, 6'7". So big kid, and he put up some good numbers. I would throw out, people are ripping him for what happened in the bowl loss to Auburn when he had a poor showing, but some questions about his decision making. But I think Lynch will go in the first round. Big kid, maybe Hugh Jackson can work with him.
Yeah, I mean, I love how that's every year they just overreact to anything that happened in a bowl game. Doesn't matter. You can have 4 years of film.
Sure.
You have a great bowl game. Oh, he's a second coming. You know, you have one bad bowl game. Oh, he's the worst. He can't hang it. You know, bowl games have a lot more to do with than just how one player plays. His offensive line got eaten up by Auburn in the bowl game, and that was a big part of the problem for Lynch. Cashed a big bet on Auburn in that ball game, so I remember it well.
All right.
I don't look at Paxton Lynch as being an NFL starting quarterback. I just don't. I mean, he's really big. His size impresses people. I'm not thrilled with his arm. I don't know that he's going to be at that level. I see him as a backup at best.
Carter Cook could go late first round.
I don't think Cook's got the arm. I really don't. I like his decision making, but he's not a guy that's going to let it fly 50 yards and make plays at the NFL level. Career backup, nope.
All right, Hackenberg. Now, I agree with him, but he shouldn't have said it. They asked him why he struggled the last few years, and he blamed the coaching staff at Penn State. He said, hey, look what I did under O'Brien. Now Franklin comes in, I'm running for my life, the old line stunk. So he threw everybody under the bus at these interviews at the Combine.
And he's telling the truth. And one thing, I mean, Hackenberg, I watched him a lot. You're watching the Big 12, the Big 10, the 14-team Big 10. And Cardell Jones, the next guy that we want to talk about, who's sixth on the list in quarterbacks. In terms of upside, a guy you can get not in the first round that has a chance to be a starter, Hackenberg's that guy. Cardell Jones is that guy. You get him in the second, third, fourth round, not pay the premium, and have someone who there's hope for. The arm strength is there. The measurables are there. I like the heads, or what's inside the heads of those two kids, both, a lot more than your seniors, your Dak Prescotts and Kevin Hogans and Brandon Allens of the world. None of those guys are going to be starters in the NFL. Hackenberg and Jones, at least there's a little bit of upside and potential at the next level.
Wait a second now. I've had 2 NFL agents tell me they love Hogan.
Of course they do. And again, when you look at the measurables on Hogan, they all look great. The measurables were always there for Kevin Hogan. What was not there was any semblance of consistency from Hogan. He'd have a good game, he'd have a bad game, and the games that he was awful, he was awful. the arm strength is there. Obviously, he followed Andrew Luck into that starting position at Stanford, but I don't look at Kevin Hogan as being an NFL starter.
Right.
I just don't.
What didn't help was David Shaw, Mr. Conservative. It would, you know what that guy would do, and sit on a lead as well, and he wouldn't open it up. All right, money time. That was a lot of fun. Money time. Where are we going, Teddy?
Well, let's go to one of the games we talked about in the big game breakdown, and we're going to lay a little bit of chalk tonight. Take a look at Kansas City Royals, game number 922, minus 165. This is chalk worth laying because it's not just Volquez early for KC. They also have Wade Davis available late. Davis, of course, their closer, has not been scored on this season, and he's starting to remind people of a guy named Mariano Rivera, perhaps. He's been that good. He is a dominant hurler right now. I like Casey early. I like him late. This is chalk worth laying. Give me the Royals minus $1.65. That's the play of the day for Thursday.
Awesome job. We're back Friday. Tell your friends. Thanks for the spike in views. And the NFL is here, right around the corner. We can't wait on SportsBit. Betting Insight today.